Taylor, it's awesome to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm excited to chat more about what we do.
I've been wanting to have you on for a long time because our industries kind of crossed paths several times, and I wanted to have this conversation to find out a little more about Yonder Marketing. The first question, because I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you, but the first one is, where's the name come from? Yonder Marketing. My grandma used to say out yonder, so talk to us about the name and where did it come from?
Yeah, so funny enough, I wish I had more creative of a story, but we rebranded the previous marketing agency I worked at. And we landed on the name Lasso. That was the name of the agency, but we had this list of kind of our runner-up names that we liked but didn't pick. And so when we decided to start this business, we thought, well, we wanted to have a similar Western vibe. Let's go back to that plan B list and see if there's anything good on there. And we looked and we're like, oh, Yonder's a pretty great name.
It is.
So it's kind of where it came from initially. We loved it because it really ties to our mission of helping people get where they want to go. And so I like that yonder means somewhere in the distance. And for a lot of our clients, I think that's what it is for them, right? We know we want to be successful. But what does that mean? And so part of what we do is sometimes just marketing, but it's also some business coaching, right? As well, kind of we have to know where you want to be. If we can do the marketing to get you there, we have to know where we're headed. So that's kind of the meaning behind it. It's also fun. My sister and I, who own the business, our last maiden name is Yates with a Y. And so I kind of like the Y for Yonder. Kind of reminds me of that as well.
That is a cool story, and that's great to incorporate the name with the vision and taking people beyond where they're at today. So that's cool. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I have a pet peeve about marketing agencies that have weird names that don't actually mean anything. So if you're gonna have a weird name, you have to at least back it up with a good story.
Exactly. And sometimes you don't know the story because of a lack of a narrative, and so there's names of marketing places even. I won't go into where, but I'm like, where does that come from? What does that mean? At the same time, it sticks in your head, definitely sticks in your head, and you don't forget about it. But it's I think, some of the best logos, the best names, there's, even if it's subconscious, like the FedEx, we've all seen those memes with the arrow that no one saw. And now when you see the arrow, you can't unsee the arrow. So it has to do with logistics and all, I won't even, there's so many that are just, the Amazon, the arrow. Yeah, it's there's just so many things that are subconscious, but you don't miss it, and I think that's great. I think it's one of those things that you can't unsee it once you see it. And if you got to guess where the name comes from, it's maybe go back to the drawing board and talk to Taylor.
Yes, yeah. I tell people that a lot. We offer naming services, and I tell people that sounds silly. Maybe it sounds silly, well, the name's the easiest part, or I want to name it after this or that. But we've done a lot of naming work, and we had a company that was kind of a consulting firm, and they came to us with a list of names they were thinking about, and we researched them, and one of them was also the name of a hate group. And we're like, maybe not. I don't know. That's kind of not what you all stand for. So there's a lot of value in bringing in an agency at the naming phase, for sure, just to kind of double check and say, have you thought about this? This sounds a little funny. When we were naming Lasso, the previous agency I was at, one of her top for a hot minute was Spur. But you can imagine Spur marketing does not sound great. We weren't ready to go into the reproductive health field. So, there's those things that when you have an external agency, they can help you think through those.
For sure. Just to bounce off some ideas that you have that we think are awesome, but then you realize they're kind of lame.
Exactly. It's good to have that external party.
Absolutely. When did you know this is something that I want to do by yourself? You talked about your sister, but when did you say, hey, I'm gonna start this business? I don't want to be in the corporate world anymore. When was that like a revelation to you?
I think I'd been kind of thinking about it for several years, especially during COVID. We were starting to think about having kids, and I was thinking I want flexibility. I want the ability to work when I want to work. And my previous job had a lot of flexibility, but I was also a manager, and that's different, right? When people are reporting to you, you can't just take off for a day without totally having a lot to catch up on when you get back. And so it had been in the back of my mind, and I had told my husband, maybe I want to do my own thing, but at every time it kind of seemed okay, not a good time to go out on a limb and do this, right? Not a good time to lose a steady income. So really I was kind of pushed out of the nest. In January of last year, my sister and I both were working at an agency in Denver, and that agency told me on January 2nd that we were closing by the end of January. And so I had to make a plan quickly. And so, because I was one of the upper management at the agency, I found out before everybody else did. And so I took some time to kind of think about it. And I thought we should do our own thing. Maybe this is the time. And so because my sister was my employee, I actually had to call her and tell her we were laying her off. And so I remember the phone call being Bad news, you don't have a job. Good news, I have a plan. And so in 10 minutes, she went from, kind of crying when I gave her the news to being like, all right, let's do this. We need a website. We need a name. We need a logo. Let's go. So
Awesome.
it was not planned. But I think sometimes with entrepreneurship, there's never, it's like having kids, doing anything else, any of those big life changes, there's never a good time. And so we were really, lucky that we were both on the same page. And so something I'd been always wanting to do and thinking about, but kind of got pushed to do it in January of last year.
That's so true that we're never 100% ready. That's one thing. But then the best ideas come from, that a pressure point, like something happens that or trigger that, launches you out into something else. That's
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I think sometimes if you're given too much time and space to come up, create something new, you kind of want it to be perfect. And I had a previous mentor that just used to say, do it ugly. She was like, it's better to do it than to not do it. And so I think that was in our favor. I don't think I would have made that leap myself.
For sure. Well, that's exactly how this podcast started. We did it ugly at the very beginning. I had some great support from my family, but like when I look back at the initial videos, like 55, 56 videos ago, podcasts ago, they're very different than they are today. But I think you can take your time to make strategic changes while you're doing it, but to get started, you just got to do it. You just got to bite the bullet.
Yeah, and a lot of things you can't know until you start.
Yeah.
You have to actually do the thing first.
Absolutely. And I think that crucible of stress and pressure actually creates a lot of things. There's so many metaphors about diamonds, creating from pressure and things like that. And I think those are the best businesses because we're solving a problem, we're answering a problem, whether it's our own problem, financial problem, we got to pay the bills, keep the lights on in the house, or we're answering a problem in society and like what does the workplace need? What does the economy need right now? And both of those things, answering those problems are the best way to, I think, start a business. And because I'm not a fan at all. Because marketing, I love marketing. I've been, in a previous life, I did marketing, and I'm not a fan. Never been a fan of creating needs. Creating the need and then responding to that need. I think we got to answer the need that's already there. That's my personal take.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's the other piece that was happening in the background as I was finding out that I was no longer fully employed. Was I had been living in Wyoming, working for this agency in Denver, and a part of my job was biz dev, and so I was out meeting people for this previous agency and seeing that there was a real need that was unmet. My previous agency was 10 people, much higher price point than what Yonder is. And so I was seeing there were people that were really excited. And then when we'd have the conversation, it's like, that's just not even in our price point, but they had money. They were willing to spend money. And so it was really fortuitous because then when we decided let's do our own thing, I said, I think there's a market here. We're not just jumping in and doing the same thing everyone else is doing, but we're doing something really fundamentally different. And so that was a part of the impetus too, was not just, I know how to do marketing, but like, I think we can actually make a business of this. Like, I think we can serve a niche that's not being served.
Right. You can do your own thing. It's a unique version of what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for watching today. These podcasts are powered by Payrock, and Payrock is a payment solutions provider. We work with any size business or nonprofit, improving those payment acceptance efficiencies while reducing those overall costs. You can get a hold of me through any one of those social media channels, or you can give me a call. Let's get back to that podcast. Can you remember your first client? What was that like and who was it?
Yeah, I do. So when we left our previous agency, because it was closing down, we were lucky to take some clients with us. So I don't really count those. We were really lucky. They all wanted to keep working with us. But Our first true new Yonder client was actually a connection that I'd worked with over a decade ago at the same marketing agency in Denver, reached out and was like, hey, do you still do marketing? And I was like, yeah, not at the other company. I have my own company now. And he had a referral for me to a doctor in Denver that was looking for a website for his practice. And it was a really small dollar project, but it sticks out to me because I had built that relationship a decade earlier and then forgotten about that guy. Like when he had my number, he's like, I had to find it on LinkedIn. I was like, who are you again? It really reminded me of the power of relationship building, that even though it had been 10 years, like I was kind of the name on the top of the list when he had a colleague that said, I need a website. He was like, oh, I know somebody to call. And so, I think that really kind of shows how we built our business, which has been longstanding relationships and obviously lots of new relationships too. But, we don't do cold calls. We don't do hard sales. We build relationships, and I find the business always comes. So it was a small project, and we got our feet wet, and we had to like literally get our invoicing software up. Right? We were like, oh, we can send you an invoice. Google's like invoicing software. So that was a little crazy, but it was a perfect one to cut our teeth on because it was small, and he was a small business owner himself, so he was kind of cool with rolling with it as we were getting our feet under us.
Those are great stories because I think it's if you're true to your calling, true to what why you're doing the why behind what you're doing, and your product, is obviously a reputable product. You're sowing those seeds, and I've had countless stories in my life too where you sow these seeds and you don't know when they're gonna bear fruit. But I've had people call me 2 years later and say, hey, Erik, maybe we can talk now, and those are great, because I think it's you have to keep sowing those seeds, and sooner or later something's going to come out of it.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. When we first decided we were starting the business, it was pretty clear I would be doing biz dev. My sister, my partner, is in Denver, and she's an introvert. So we had someone ask us, like, do you have a business card? And she's like, no, I don't have business cards. And he's like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, I don't talk to people. That's Taylor's job. Like, I don't need business cards. I don't meet new people. So it was very clear that was going to be my role, which I love and I'm good at. But I literally started by going down my Rolodex of everyone I knew in Casper. And that was mostly, I grew up here. It was mostly like my mom's friends, right? Like people who still live here. I was like, right. Will you take a coffee meeting with me? Will you connect me to who you know? And that's really how we built the business. It wasn't buying ads. It wasn't really anything like that. I mean, joining the chamber was huge for us. But apart from that, it really was pounding the pavement and like building those connections until we kind of got to people that were ready to purchase.
Right. I think that grind is a part of every journey. For me, it was a 2.5-year grind of like every day, 30, in my world, it's 30 doors, 30 pulls per day. And then after, a certain time, and who knows when that is, then things change for sure. But you cannot have success in business without the grind. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I viewed every one of those initial conversations, I kind of thought of myself as like a detective. Like, even if I came out of that meeting and that person was like, I have no interest in marketing, we'll never need it. It was like, can I come out of that meeting with one name, one lead, one group I should join, one thing that I can sort of follow and sort of follow the clues. And I found that to be successful and helpful when you're sort of feeling stuck. You're like, well, I pulled one thing out of that meeting, even if it was, a phone number of somebody else to call.
For sure. Because networking, we never stop networking. It's important when networking is based on, those relationships, and you can never stop, Sounds like we're doing a plug for the BNI chapter. We're both in BNI.
It's actually a BNI promo podcast.
Exactly.
No, that has been on the top of my mind a lot lately. Yeah, the power of that referral. Yeah. Especially in this community, I feel that 100%. That carries so much weight.
Right.
Just knowing, even a friend of a friend. One of our clients I won because when I was a kid, she worked with my mom. And like, that was kind of why. Like, I don't think she looked at my credentials that hard. She was just like, oh, I love your mom. You should do our marketing. And, that's just kind of how it works around here. And so I think those relationships are so valuable.
It is. Especially, I think you're right, absolutely, in Casper. I think the statistic is over 80% of people ask before they actually engage with a new vendor or a new person. They'll ask someone else, 80%. So it's not just about the transaction. Obviously, your product and your price point needs to be, it's all within reason. If all things, like we say, all things being equal, 80% will ask for a referral, ask their friend, ask their parent, ask their brother, should we work with this person, or who do you recommend? Who do you recommend? And that's what Casper is all about, is those relationships. Was there ever a plan B for you? Or were you all in from day one, January 2nd?
I was all in. As we talked about with entrepreneurship, I think, sometimes when you have a plan B, you're not all in on plan A. You kind of have one foot in and one foot out, because you're thinking, well, you kind of sabotage your own success, I think, because maybe you only put 90% in because you're kind of holding back that 10%. So I think it can be a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So no, we had no plan B. I mean, my plan B would be to go find a job, but there was no available plan B kind of ready. And I think that was good for both of us, just because it really did force us to hustle and figure things out and build the business. And so I think, if I were to be in a similar situation, do it again, I think I would also, try to avoid having a backup plan, because I'm a pretty risk averse person. And I think I probably would have kind of self-sabotaged. I'm like, oh, darn, I knew it wasn't going to work. I'm going to go back to my safe full-time job. But, lucky, I guess, for me in this case, it's a little hard to find a marketing job in Wyoming. Actually, there aren't that many. And so, that really forced me to make it work.
Right. I think being all in is definitely, I think that when we in our mind, if we think there's a plan B, we're going to limit our success for sure, because we're not going to, pull off the best of what we have inside of us, because in the back of mind is like, if this doesn't work, I'll go back to doing this. If this doesn't work, I'll go back to doing that. And then if you have that mindset, then you're eventually going to go back to what you're doing before.
Yeah, and usually the plan B is easier than the plan A, right? Like the plan A is the ambitious thing, and that's why there's risk. And so I think it is easy to go, I'm kind of, don't want to put in that effort. Like, I'm just going to go back to the plan B, which feels easier. So yeah, we were both in, and we were lucky we both had supportive partners that were kind of like, this is the only thing we can see both of you doing. And so they were willing to,
That's cool.
jump off the bridge with us and take the risk.
Plan B is definitely easier, but I think that plan A is usually the more rewarding one. Entrepreneurship is the most rewarding. What do you find the most rewarding to be having your own ad agency here in Wyoming?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. One is just getting to serve the community I grew up in. That's been so incredible. Growing up here, many of the businesses and clients we work with and nonprofits we work with are entities I've known about for a long time and grew up with. And so that's been special to be able to be part of their story in some way, and have that influence on our community locally. That's been huge. Also, just the flexibility and the lifestyle that comes with entrepreneurship. You're kind of always on, which can be hard. But I love the ability to be my own boss and, serve the clients I want to serve, do the work I want to do, say no to the work that isn't aligned with us, and ultimately have a life outside of work too. So it's been really rewarding to be back to where I'm from and get to have this impact here.
I think when you have multiple priorities, like a family, in your case, a husband, because I have a wife, then I think that those priorities we can find time for those things. We can find time for meeting all the priorities because we can make those choices and those determined choices. And sometimes it means we're working 40, 50 hours a week on one thing, but then we can carve out time for our other priorities and we can manage that better than if we're, stuck working for someone else, I think. Yeah,
I would agree with that. And I have my full day from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep that I can flex time. If I'm working a 9 to 5, I'm at my desk from 9 to 5. But for me now, I have the ability to take my kids to doctor's appointments during the day or just take a break during the day if I'm kind of feeling like I'm stuck and work in the evening. Last night I stayed up late working on some things because I like doing graphic design in the evening when it's quiet, no one's emailing me and no one's bugging me. So I think that's been huge for me as well, just to be able to manage my day start to finish. I feel like I have a lot more flexibility.
I think the key is putting the 50 hours where you want them.
Yeah. You still have to get it done. I think that's a key for entrepreneurship and just in general. I work from home, and I think there's a discipline that comes with that. Being able to wake up every morning and say, no one's telling me I have to go to work, but I do have to go to work. Right. I do have to get up and do the thing, get dressed and make it happen. And so I think that can be challenging, but especially in client service, which we both work in, you can't really just decide someday that you're just not really going to do it. The clients will remind you that you have deadlines to hit. Sure. So there's a little bit of that kick in the rear
deadlines don't change. The deadlines are still there, even if you're working at 10 p.m. at night. You can't say, well, it's after 5. I'll see it tomorrow. The work will be there tomorrow. It doesn't work. If there's a deadline, there's a deadline.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs think that, it's the ability they can just, flick on Netflix and watch it whenever they want. But if you don't have that ability to turn it off and stay focused for a very specific amount of time per day, then it doesn't work. You have to have that self-discipline if you're working from home, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's definitely not for everyone. I think some people need that level of routine and that level of structure of going into the office every day. I've never needed that. I've mostly worked from home most of my career, so when we decided to launch our own thing, pretty comfortable in that space. But yeah, definitely, it's not for everyone. I think we saw that during COVID. A lot of people who are now working from home were like, "Oof, this is hard." My bed is right there, right? It's hard to stay focused.
For sure, especially if your office is in your bedroom. Yep. For a lot of people, it is. But yeah, if we want that 9 to 5, then you need to find another passion, another career, because it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you do get to pick your hours, you're also always on because you're the owner, right? Yeah. Everything stops with you. And so I'm lucky to have a business partner in my sister, and she doesn't have kids. And so her life looks a little different than me. And so when I do have life stuff come up, she's kind of around to sort of answer the phones, as it were, and make sure things keep moving. But we're both always on. We'll get a client email at, 9:30 at night, and it's like, well, can't really ignore that till tomorrow. So that's the downside, but the flexibility is worth it.
So Jordan actually has to answer the phone sometimes?
She answers emails. If she answered the phone, she called her, she wouldn't answer. She let it go to voicemail and then text you.
Right. Which is still customer service. Texting back is still a valid form of communication.
It is.
We'll give her that. Yeah. So, what's been the biggest headache for you since you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest headache has actually been figuring out how to manage our size and manage growth. Mm-hmm. I was talking to an agency coach the other day. Believe it or not, that's a real job. You can be a marketing agency coach. And he had said, I think it's actually harder to stay small than to grow. And I think that's really true. From day one, we always said we don't want to staff. I've managed a staff, and I love managing people when it's really fun. I don't really want to fire people. I don't want to give people disciplinary action. Like, I realize that is not my jam and not where I'm at in my life. And so we both decided we don't want employees. Maybe some freelancers. Maybe we had an intern for a while that was fabulous, but no real full-time employees. And so with that, we only have limited capacity. It's 2 of us. And so I think that's been the most challenging thing is we've been really successful, but it's like, how do we manage our capacity? How do we figure out who does what? How do we figure out where to outsource? Like, we recently outsourced our bookkeeping, and that's been huge. So I think that's been the biggest challenge, which is a good one to have, and I certainly won't complain. But how do we manage that growth? And how do we use the limited capacity that we have the best way we can?
That's an interesting concept. It's harder to stay small than to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that every organism, whether it's human or whether it's a business, the natural element is to grow. Is growth is a part of it, and so we can stifle that if we don't take risks and we don't maybe hire people at the right time or outsource. If we don't want to hire, we outsource. We can stifle that growth, but every organism grows.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point. I never thought about that it's harder to stay small than to grow.
Yeah, I think so. And definitely, I think growth for us now looks different in terms of taking on more of the clients that are like our favorite types of clients. And, I think we'll continue to grow in those sorts of ways, but not growing in terms of size is this limiting factor. And it's required us to be more selective and more strategic too, which I think is a great thing. But yeah, definitely it's been its own challenge from when I worked at a bigger agency where we did grow, we grew staff. So it's been new and different in kind of managing that.
I think that growth, I don't know what you think about this, what's your take, but I don't think that growth is always financial. Growth can be in terms of products that are improving quality and offering a better quality product. And I think growth is one of those natural attributes, but I think sometimes growth can primarily be offering a product or service that's a little more adapted to our customers' needs, things like that. So growth takes on different shapes and sizes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when you hear growth, we think the graph, right? Revenue going up.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the more accurate word is just progress, right? Like, I think that's our goal, is to always progress in terms of better and more desirable clients. We love our clients, but continue to do more of the work we love, continuing to hone our products and our services and make them even more cost efficient, all those things. But I think when you take revenue growth per se, in terms of hiring a bunch of staff and really scaling, when you take that out of the equation, it's definitely different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and then the ability to be able to choose your client is also a strength and an aspect of our growth as well. To say, I'm not going to take on this one because doesn't align with my values or doesn't align with with my goals. And maybe for example, I think that a lot of companies that want to be charged the least usually require the most out of you. It's same in I think every industry, but to be able to get to a point in our career to say, hey, I'm not going to take this one. You don't align with my values, or whatever politically a way you want to say that, politically correct way you want to say that. I think that's part of growth as well.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think the first year of our business, roughly the first year, was kind of what I call hustle mode. Yeah. I've done agency work long enough that there are some big red flag clients where you're you meet them and you're like, that's a hard pass. But early on, you kind of have to take the yellow flags, right? You're kind of like, okay, we need to get our reputation out there. This seems like a good client. If the person's a little weird or a little nitpicky, whatever, we'll make it work. And so I think the first year was really hustle mode. And now I feel like we're coming into this next phase where we're kind of maybe not at the mountaintop, but we've reached a little bit of a clearing, and it's we can take a breath and say, which clients are the type are really worth going after. And it's not just sort of signing up anyone who, fits our big categories, and really narrowing down the kind of work that we enjoy doing. I think especially for us, there's a lot of work we can do, but that's not all work that we love doing. And so I think that's something we're figuring out too.
And having the time to choose the clients that can also be strategic for your for growth or for for an event down the road. But choosing strategic clients is also I think a strength, because you're right, in that grind mode, that first season, you got to take what you get.
Yep.
You have to keep the lights on in your building.
Yeah. And I think what I've learned is being aware that you're in that mode is really important. Being aware that that's a season, that is not how you should run your business.
Right.
When you start, that is exactly what you have to do. You can't be too choosy. But I think from my previous experience, I kind of was after a while knew, okay, we need to come out of that now. We've got a book of business. Now's the time. And we had a couple of small clients recently that, decided they wanted to go with in-house resources or, life happens. We have client turnover, and we were actually really grateful because those were a couple of clients that like when we kind of done the like clients we love, clients we like, clients we can keep working for, there was a couple kind of on that list where we're like, this client's great, but maybe they're like the revenue's too small or the client's really difficult to get a hold of. And so I often find that when there's a little bit of client churn, it's usually those clients at the bottom of the list. And so it's always a good time to then fill that space with something better.
If you could talk to your previous, like your older or your younger Taylor, what would you tell your younger Taylor that you would do differently? Like what have you learned in the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think in the past 2 years and even, before that a little bit, I would say trust your gut. Like I have a pretty strong intuition. I think there's times where I've talked myself out of a gut feeling on a potential client that seemed maybe like they weren't so great, but I sort of signed them up anyway. Even when you think you're good at reading those out, you're not always. And I think every time I look back and say, that's a decision I wouldn't have made, I think I didn't trust my gut. And I sort of let either the revenue talk or, kind of talked myself out of it for one reason or another. So besides just telling myself it's going to work out, you're going to pay your mortgage, it will be okay. Right. I think I would tell myself just to listen to your gut, right? And that usually won't lead you the wrong way.
That's true. Trust your gut. That's good. Yeah, it's true. There's countless times where I think we have this discernment or we have this ability to feel what's going to happen through a situation. At the beginning, we don't have those choices. Like going back to what you said, we got to take it, even though we know this is going to be a rough client to work with. But beginning to listen to yourself, I think, is important. Listen to that what you're feeling about a specific client, and then maybe writing it down, and then 6 months later revisiting it and say, hey, I knew this one was going to be rough. I was in a season where I had to take the client, but maybe in this season I can say no to this type of client this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Ezra Klein. I listened to a podcast a couple of years ago about intuition, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher the science, but the basic idea is that there's a group of brain scientists that think that your intuition is actually just kind of your non-accessible part of your brain.
Oh, wow.
So maybe it's not so woo-woo. It's really just like your brain is in all these calculations in the background, and so your sort of subconscious brain's like, we've looked at it. We fully understand what's happening here, but we can't access that. And so we just get kind of a gut feeling. And so I found that I kind of keep that in mind sometimes, that it's not just like a feeling. Sometimes there probably is some information there that maybe I'm processing and not aware I'm processing. So that's also helped me lean on my gut a little bit more.
I'm sure. Yeah. What are your favorite types of projects to work on?
Ooh, I would think, in general, in terms of industry, we love our nonprofit clients. We're both really passionate about that. And so those are just as far as a type of client, one that we really enjoy. But across all industries, I think our favorite client is one that we're really taking from zero to the next level. When you have a client that has a great website, already has pretty good social, and they're looking just for some help kind of sprucing things up, those are great. We love those. But the change is going to be incremental, right? They're already doing a lot of things right, and so you're just not going to see that jump. But we love clients that are really starting at ground zero because we get to see huge change for them, and that feels like a huge win for them. So we had a client that was a landscaping company, and they had basically let their previous website contract lapse because they were over it, and they were like, we can live without a website for a bit. So they literally, their SEO was totally trashed. That's what happens when your website is gone from the internet for a while. Yeah. And they needed help building a website. And so we built a website for them, great SEO optimized. And within 2 weeks, they were ranking at the top for SEO for some of the keywords that they wanted. And so that was a huge change for them, going from not having a website to being at the top of search. So
all right.
We love those projects, especially our small businesses who have never really put time maybe into their marketing or have never needed a website. They've sort of gotten along without it, never needed social media maybe. Those are ones where we can see a lot of progress quickly, and that's really rewarding.
So what are the different offerings that you have in your portfolio of services? What do you offer your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of buckets. One is website design and development for small businesses. We also do content, so that really includes social media management, so we can completely post on Facebook and all the major platforms, comment, share things, really act as our clients on social. We also do blogs and blog writing, which is mostly for SEO purposes, but sometimes clients also just want content up on their site. We can write content. Jordan is kind of the queen of anything the written word, so we can do all of that. For our nonprofit clients primarily, but for all, we can do newsletters as well, monthly newsletters. We do a lot of graphic design, so we can do everything from a new brand, a new logo, to just designing business cards, letterhead, a report, anything that our clients might need that way. And then we also do search engine optimization. And I think that's it. There must be more, but those are our main offerings. So
anything communication. If you want to communicate your
much.
product or your service, whether it's, a digital or even, in print, then you can help your clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. The one thing I didn't mention is paid advertising.
Okay.
And often in Wyoming and for the clients we work with, their spend is not so significant. They really need someone's help to manage it. And so often it's just giving advice saying, hey, you should call Oil City News. Like, here's where you should advertise. But if we have clients that have larger budgets, we can also manage their spend for them. So they cut us a check and we pay the vendors and create all the creative, and we can actually manage an advertising campaign start to finish as well. So we can do that for our larger clients too.
Do you primarily work here in Casper or Wyoming, or where are your clients located?
Yeah, wherever they want to be that will hire us. Now, we have a lot of clients in Casper, a lot of clients in Wyoming. We also, because of our roots in Colorado, we have a fair number of clients in Colorado. But we also have a couple clients in California and one in New York. So it really depends. Often it's about, where our relationships take us, but our focus is the Rocky Mountains,
okay.
Especially, surveying Casper, Colorado, and I'd love to get into like Montana and the Dakotas too. So if anyone's listening and lives up there and needs marketing, let me know. Right. But that's our primary focus is the Rocky Mountain area.
And we do have listeners in Montana. So if you're listening, Montana, give Taylor a call.
Give me a call.
So do you think Wyoming or the Rocky Mountains have specific challenges in their marketing needs?
Yeah, I do think so. I think there's kind of this funny combination, one, especially in Wyoming, of like geographic distance. So if you're wanting to reach the whole state, it's big and it's really spread out.
It is.
I mean, I-25 corridor can hit a lot of the state, but not like half the state, right? Like I think it's challenging. So if you're wanting to reach the state with something like billboards, you would need to buy a lot of billboards. Right. You can't just kind of hit a main road.
Right.
So I think that's challenging covering the state. If you want to with like print media or billboards, that's hard. TV is expensive. So and radio can be expensive too. But then there's also the challenge that Wyoming tends to be a little behind the times on digital adoption. So usually digital media is our go-to for big geographic area. You can be really targeted. You can target just parents of preschoolers or whatever your really targeted niche is. But I always say Wyoming's kind of a decade behind everybody else. And so, people are using social media here. We use the internet, but I think it can be challenging. You don't have the same uptake of, I think, digital as you would elsewhere. So it's a really unique challenge of how do you reach the state when the most cost-effective tactic is maybe not the most effective here.
Right.
So I think that can be challenging.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a bad thing to be 10 years behind in the social media front. Not necessarily bad for personal, but still there's that challenge of people that are not on the map at all whatsoever. Because social media doesn't have, and the internet doesn't have any, geographic boundaries. So you can take your product and service, you can go anywhere with it. How do you convince the skeptical Wyomingite or Casperite that social is the present? It's not just the future; it's the now.
Yeah. So I think more broadly, when I'm thinking about the value of marketing, one thing I have learned in my career is that I don't convince people anymore. Mm-hmm. I've learned that when you take on a client that is like, I don't even know if I need marketing, I don't think it would help me, and you can kind of convince them and say, give me, I don't know, $2,000 and we'll see what we can do. That client wants to confirm that they were right, and no matter how well you do, they will figure out how to prove they were right.
That's true.
Maybe it didn't make them $1 million. Maybe it didn't reach as many people as they thought. Yes. They will find a way. And so, sometimes there is some convincing around tactics, right? Like, you need marketing, you're ready to spend. Let's pick the offerings on the menu that are right for you. But I have learned, do not convince people of the value of marketing. Those are usually not valuable leads. And it's a lot easier when people already at least say, I know I need something. Can you help me figure out what that is? Those tend to be a lot more fruitful. As far as digital, I do think not as much convincing is needed generally, except for I do think with organic social media. I think that can be hard. I think brands and businesses tend to think, well, someone's not going to click on my Facebook post and buy my product. And in some cases that's true, but it's really building a brand story. It's like giving a way for them to get to know you so that when they do drive by your store, when they do get a call from your sales rep, like they feel like they know you as a person, the brand as a person. And so I think that's the value of social media. It's not always conversion focused. And I think that can be hard for people, understandably, to like when they're looking at limited budget, like, do I spend money on social media if it doesn't directly lead to sales? And I think it's hard in the age of digital not to be there.
Absolutely. I think that people buy, especially here again, but people buy in general from people that they know or they think they know. And it's, again, goes back to one of the reasons why I even started this podcast is connecting those things. Because some people have amazing stories, like your entrepreneurial journey is an amazing story, but people don't know it if you don't know them. They don't know what they don't know. So connecting those stories with people's ears is the reason why I do what I do. But going back to social, there is an aspect of that it's not conversion related. It's just your brand identity. It's just, it's brand awareness. It's things like that are difficult for a lot of business owners to grasp. That I want this to convert. I want my podcast to reach so many people so I get so many more clients, and it doesn't work like that. It's not that linear.
Yeah, no, we had a client when we first, started our business. So shortly after we first started it, like I said, I worked in agency for a long time, but this is my newest sort of iteration of agency work. We keep a list of like kind of red flags. Like, okay, next time we meet a client like that, we're not going to go for it. And this client really, I kind of didn't read it at the time, really thought social media was going to deliver for him very quickly. He needed dollars in the door quickly. And, I think kind of one of those that like when you walk into the doctor and you're like, yeah, I already know I have this. Like, it's kind of how he came to us. Like, I already know I need these things. And I think more than I should have, I kind of let him steer a little. I shouldn't have. And he was upset when he's like, well, I haven't made any money from Facebook. I'm like, yeah, yeah. It doesn't surprise me. Like, it takes time. It takes time to build that relationship. And so, I think that's definitely something I have seen is people expecting those things to convert right away. And I think, you do everything to grow your business. Social media, it's not that it never converts. It's that it's part of this larger story.
Right.
And I think that's hard to communicate and hard for business owners, sometimes limited budgets, to like be able to wait around for that to resolve, right?
Right. I think ultimately it does have to convert it ultimately, but you have to put, time frames. It's like you can't expect it to be overnight. There's no such thing as an overnight success. It's like it takes years to have overnight success. And but I think that in the big picture, you have to draw value from it somehow, whether that's financial value or it's recognition, name recognition value, but you have to draw value somehow from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. We're big on metrics and trackability. And I think it's just hard in the age of digital. People expect things to be instant, and like they are instant, and that when you post on Facebook, it like goes live instantly. Yeah. But these things still take time. It's still building a relationship with someone, right? Like every time they see your post, they're getting to kind of know you as a business, and that takes some time. And so I think part of what I work on is level setting with clients about, if you're looking for conversions tomorrow, let's run some Facebook ads. Let's get it in front of the people that are, parents or preschoolers, whatever. Like, let's get it in front of those people that are buying what you sell. Meanwhile, let's keep these other things, churning in the background. We have a client where organic social is one of their top drivers of sales. But they've been doing social for 10 years, right? So that it can get there, and it doesn't always take 10 years. But I think it's not the get rich quick tactic.
Exactly,
and
right.
I think when clients come into us already thinking they know what they need, that's usually where we get in trouble.
Right. And I think as humans, we look at that. We see these people that are super successful online, and we read their bios of they have an online e-commerce store, and they're making hundreds, if not thousands, per day, whatever it is. And we think that that's attainable by everyone, and it is attainable for sure. But what we don't always read is the backstory. How long did it take to get there, and how much money did they put into it? How much money did they invest with situations that didn't work out as well as they wanted to? And then they learn from trial and error. And how often did they do it? Did they do it ugly, like you mentioned, until they got it, until now they're doing it pretty? Those stories are unique to everyone, but it definitely takes time, like anything.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think especially on advertising, there's always a little bit of sticker shock too, usually. With our smaller clients, we obviously give them really reasonable recommendations, but all the client that says, well, I want to be where my competitor is, that guy's everywhere. And I'm like, great, here's the numbers on how much it costs to be everywhere. And they're like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, well, yeah.
It's probably what they're paying, There's some there's some truth to organic SEO, but organic SEO or marketing definitely takes a longer build up.
Totally.
So, what does the future look like for marketing for small businesses? Do you see any changes on the forefront, or things are pretty static?
Yeah, I think nothing's ever going to change. I wish that would
Trick question.
But, right? No, I think I see AI playing a bigger role in the way small businesses market themselves. I think I have listened to a lot of podcasts and like consumed a lot of literature on AI just across industries, not even just in marketing. And what I've heard that I think has stuck out to me the most is AI will always have to be run by a human, right? A human's going to have to go in and put in the prompt and tell the AI what to do. And I think, the wisdom that we bring and that people like us bring, other marketing agencies, that doesn't change. And so what I think will happen is small businesses will say, well, sweet, I have an AI that can write all my Facebook posts, write my website copy, whatever. But if they don't know the right inputs to put into that system, they won't get the right outputs. And so I do think there will be a little bit of, I expect more like, oh, well, I'm just going to have ChatGPT do my marketing for me. And, we'll say, okay, call us when you need us. And I think they will call us. I think AI will be useful to small businesses in producing content, producing the things. But I think where we'll provide value is telling that small business, like, here's what you need, right? Here's what to tell AI, right? And I think it'll still be more complicated than that too. But yeah, I think there will be a little bit of AI backlash, right? Everyone will say, why do I need to hire a person when I can do AI? And then go, actually, turns out my AI Facebook posts look like everybody else who's also using AI and putting in the same prompts. So I think I'm definitely not a naysayer of AI. I've been making it my goal to like use it once a day for something, just to continue to like grow and learn how to use it better, because I think it's not going away. But I do think human input and like the value we bring as strategists will always be there. So I have a feeling our role may change and marketing may change for small businesses, but I think the fundamentals will stay the same.
So would you say that the danger is just relying solely on AI?
Yeah, I think so. And thinking that AI can give you wisdom. Really, I think AI can give you output. I think, like I said, it is all about the input in the prompt and what you put into it, whether it's something that generates images, something that generates text, video, whatever. We've worked with some clients that had some AI generated videos, which I didn't really like. He's like, can you put these on my website? I'm like, I don't have a problem with that. But I looked at them and I was like, these are not great. I don't know if you watched these, but these are not great. And like any marketing person would say, these are not great. Like we could tweak the prompts, right? So yeah, I think that's true. I think across industries, the value of AI will be in just getting things done quicker. Mm-hmm. But I think the value of the human wisdom that comes with having done this for a long time, like that won't change. And I think businesses will always need it.
Right. And it says it. There's a disclaimer at the bottom of, all those sites. It's like, we make mistakes. ChatGPT makes mistakes. Double check your work, because people are using it for all kinds of things. And it's like, you got to double check it, because it could be wrong. I mean, there's definitely, they've been wrong for me on several occasions. And it's not like infinite wisdom and exactly, it's not omniscience by any means. So wrapping this up a little bit, how do you stay motivated in all this? Because I mean, this is a very dynamic space. You have AI that people are saying AI is threatening my job. AI is going to replace me. How do you stay motivated when your landscape, what you do, evolves all the time? Websites, we're talking about Web3 now, Web3 domains. We're talking about, your landscape changes all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what helps me is I was really thrown into the deep end of all of this. So when I started my career, I was the only millennial at an agency largely run by boomers. And they kind of were like, your job is the internet. Like, you do all the things that involve the internet. The World Wide Web is your domain. And so I think like my job has even changed a lot in the time that I've done marketing. I mean, when we first started, Google Ads, for example, was really manual. You had to go in and write 17 different versions of ads, and it was very, very hands-on. And now Google has most of the time great AI tools that like generate headlines for you, and they kind of optimize your keywords. And so again, our role for that product has moved a little more from being the person in there, turning all the levers, to being the strategist of looking at what's our overall strategy for Google Ads. So I think that's indicative of kind of how changes in the industry go. Things change fast, but I find that there's always something new, and then whatever we've learned from the previous iterations, never go away. It's always building upon that. So for me, it's just always continuing to learn, not being afraid to jump into something new, and not being stuck to what we've done in the past. I think there's a lot of people that are, for example, like resistant to digital media because they're like, I always advertised in print. And so I think for us, and like I said, I think it's a function of kind of where I was born and like when I started in the industry, you just have to always be open to change. And knowing that the core skills, of how to create a good message and get it out to people don't change. And that's what motivates me.
How do you balance all of that? Like, because you have a life, you have a husband, you have 2 children. How do you balance your life with the demands of business? I mean, how do you find that, space to do everything?
No, I'm just kidding. Some days. One thing that's really valuable is my husband Brandon's amazing, and we both are really focused on our careers, but we are pretty good about giving each other that space. So there's, there for a while, he had really intense work schedules. So I was working, just during the day and helping with the kids at night. And now his work schedule is loosened up. And so he's like, hey, if you want to work on the weekends a little bit to get caught up, do what you need to do. So I think that's one thing, is that we were able to balance our careers and give each other that time. I think for me, it's being really strategic about when to unplug and setting boundaries. That's a little hard for me. I think what makes me good at building relationships also is dangerous, in that I'm a little bit of a people pleaser. Like, I'm like, you want me to have that proposal due by tomorrow? I absolutely will. And then I go home and I'm like, I don't know how that's going to happen. Right. So I think that's been a key for me, is, setting boundaries with our clients. I also think one thing that's helped me balance my life is being really candid about having a life. I think pre-COVID, it was really taboo, especially for women as working parents, to be like, I have kids, because then it's like, oh, well, I can't rely on you, right? Like, or that was viewed as some sort of negative. But I have found that actually connecting with a lot of our clients who are women over being a working parent has been really valuable. It gives me the transparency to be like, I have a sick kid today, gonna cancel the meeting. And my clients are always really understanding. And I think it just built a really strong camaraderie. I actually have a client that hired us. Like, she had been following us on social media for a year before she hired us. And she said, I saw that you were a working parent. And I said, working moms always get stuff done. Like, they're the best kind of people to work with.
They are.
So, I think that's been value for me, is just not being afraid to be like, I have a life. Kids get sick. Things happen.
Right.
And knowing that the right kinds of clients, obviously we have deadlines to hit. We have things to get done. But the right kinds of clients also have lives and, can understand that.
Right.
Are okay with that. So I think that's been valuable for me too.
I think, again, it goes back to, if your product and your service is solid, which it is, you will attract the clients you want, especially with your authenticity and the reality of, because I read your Facebook posts about your foster child, about just your life and buying a minivan and all the, well, you are attracting the people that you want to be a part of your life. And I think there's some strength to that, I think. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I agree with that. And I think now more than ever, especially post-COVID, with a lot of people doing Zoom from home while they had kids and dogs, I do think, in general, white collar work has moved to create more space for being okay to have a life. And I think that's been a helpful wave that I've been able to ride in terms of balancing my life and my business. But when I had my son and he was a newborn, he was on Zoom calls all the time. So that was pretty cool. I was able to work from home with him, be home for the first year. And
that's cool.
Yeah, he was just on a lot of Zoom calls.
Yeah. Who inspires you to in your life or in business? Who are your main inspirations?
Yeah, I would say one big inspiration for me, which will sound cheesy, and I'm sure I'll send this to her and she'll have some big feelings, but is my mom. So my mom, I don't think I realized it until later in life, but my mom was a born entrepreneur. And really, since I was about in first grade, she went to beauty school to do nails, and then pretty soon owned a salon, then owned 2 salons, and she's owned lots of businesses. It seems like she can't not do that. Every time she starts somewhere, she ends up the manager or owning the place. And so I think she's a huge inspiration for me, just in that she has this confidence in herself that she can do whatever it is that she set out to do. And I think she's worked in diverse industries. Now she manages my stepdad's plumbing business. She did not know anything about plumbing. She knew zero about plumbing. And now, I called her yesterday about my sink and she diagnosed it over the phone. So she's learned a lot, but I just admire that she's always willing to jump into something new, and she always has that confidence that she can make it happen and the business will succeed. So she's a big inspiration for me. And she's also been a big advisor through all of my business ventures cool. Because she's also kind of entrepreneurial in mindset. She's a person I often call when I have, tricky client question or things like that. I'll often talk to her too. So that's cool. She's a big inspiration for me, and just always moving forward and, always going for the next big thing. She also, I think, I think a lot now that we have our foster daughter, I think a lot about kind of how to deal with gender bias and stuff like that. And I like remember growing up, I don't think I ever heard about it because my mom was just like, why can't you do anything anyone else can do? And so I appreciate that about her a lot. I think about that a lot. I'm in a lot of male dominated spaces and a lot of rooms with mostly men. And that's like never bothered me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I wonder if that disadvantages me, but I don't have time to think about it, you know? And I think she also inspires me for that. Like she's comfortable walking to any room and owning who she is. And I respect that a lot.
Absolutely. That's cool. Well, shout out to moms out there that are supporting their kids even when they're out of the house.
Oh yeah. I'm still calling her all the time.
That's cool. So where can we find you, Taylor? Or do you have a website? Maybe.
You would hope we would. Yeah, we're at yondermarketing.co, not .com.
You don't need the M. You don't need it.
Don't need the M. Tried to buy the M. It's too expensive to buy the M. So we're just a .co. You can also find us on Facebook and on LinkedIn as well. And I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So those are some of the places you can find us. Maybe Instagram soon. We'll see if I'm feeling motivated. You know how it is. A cobbler has no shoes, right?
Yeah,
we're busy building everyone else's Instagrams, but those are some of the places that you can find us.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time that we've had to get to know Yonder and get to know more about you. So thank you very much for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.